Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Kellen here with Droid Life. So we're taking a look today at the Sony Xperia Z2 and the HTC One M8. We thought we'd do a little comparison between the two. We'll also do one with the Galaxy S5 just because they're two or three of the hottest devices of the moment right now. Now, the Xperia Z2 you can't buy in the US unless you buy it from an importer or something like that. It will come eventually unlocked through Sony's store, whereas the One M8 is widely available. But again, we just kind of want to compare these, especially if you're considering holding out for the Z2. So let's talk specs first here. We got displays up. And the HTC One M8 has a 5-inch 1080p display. The Z2 has a 5.2-inch tri-luminous Sony 1080p display. They're both LCD panels and both quite good, actually. If we take a look at RAM, you actually have 2 gigabytes of RAM on the One, and you have 3 gig on the Sony Xperia Z2. The processors, we got 2.3 gigahertz Qualcomm Snapdragon 801s in both, actually. So they actually are the exact same processor on the inside. You have 32 gigabytes of storage on the One M8 and 16 gig on the Z2. But if you want to talk storage, though, the good news is they both have SD card slots and they both hold up to 128 gigabyte cards. So pretty big deal there. Also on the front here, we do have front cameras. So you have a 5 megapixel wide angle, really nice front camera on the One M8. The Xperia Z2 has a 2.2 megapixel front camera. So a little bit of a difference there. If we flip to the back, obviously the cameras are a big focus. You have that 4 ultra pixel camera on the One M8, which is essentially a 4 megapixel camera that, lets in more light and does some other fancy things. And it has a second sensor now, so you can, take shots with depth and blur and all of this stuff. It's sort of a gimmick, but it does its own thing. On Sony's side, we have a 20.7 megapixel camera that's pretty nice. It's not quite as fast as HTC's, and we'll show you that in a little bit, but it's capable of taking some really, really great shots here. So in terms of their hardware, you've got front-facing speakers on both, actually. Sony actually has some really nice speakers built in there. The boom sound on the HTC One is the bigger deal, obviously. But if we line these up, you can see they're actually both quite large. In hand, the One M8 doesn't, at least the eye test, it almost doesn't look as big, but that's because it's quite rounded compared to the Xperia Z2, which is kind of squared. So you can see the curves there. In terms of just feel in hand, I much prefer the One M8. It just kind of has this round, pillowy backside, even though it's all metal. It has this sort of unibody metal design. It really feels great in hand. The Xperia Z2 doesn't feel bad necessarily, but as we mentioned in a previous video, it does kind of have the sharp edge that you kind of have to get used to. It's really just a squared off device. I don't really want to call it industrial, but it's just more square. And so you kind of have to get used to it. It is a big phone. But, after playing with it for some time, I was able to get used to it a little bit. If we take a tour of the outsides, though, you do have volume rockers on the right sides of both, but you also have a power switch on the Z2, and then your micro SD slots are there as well. The Z2 also has a dedicated camera button, though, which you don't see all that often. Up top, you have headphone jack on the Z2 and a mic, and you have a power button and a giant IR blaster on the One M8. If we flip to this other side, you do have nothing on the M8 except a SIM tray. And then you have a SIM tray and your pins for docking and charging on the Z2. And you also do have a little tassel slot there on the Z2. On the bottom, we got headphone jack on the M8 and your micro USB. And then you have microphones on the bottom of the Z2. And then if we take one more look at the back, there's your cameras. And then obviously you have these sort of glass-like finish on the Sony and that sort of brushed metal look on the HTC One M8. If we talk displays, now keep in mind again, the HTC One M8 has a 5-inch 1080p display, and the Z2 has a 5.2-inch 1080p display. Both LCDs again, and both really, really nice. So obviously we've got similar colors up here. It's just kind of a green hue, and I think they both just look vibrant and crisp. I would say the Z2 at times leans a little towards the AMOLED realm, if you will, because colors tend to seem a little more vibrant. And some people like that, some people don't. Whereas HTC One M8, I often find that things look a little washed out. But if we look at things like viewing angles, you can see I can just kind of keep pushing these and tilting and tilting and tilting, and you can see them the entire time. I mean, the viewing angles on both of these displays is quite phenomenal. And even in in with some shadows. You can see turned here into some shadows. They're still really, really nice to look at. Now, I do have these cranked to full brightness, but just really nice LCD displays in general. If we pull up Droid Life, now this is going to be hard to see on camera, but this gray area up top here, in person it looks a little lighter on the One M8, whereas it just comes off a little darker, maybe a little richer, if gray can actually get richer on the Z2. But if you scroll down, you'll notice in this picture for sure. On the One M8, this Samsung phone, which is white, actually looks white on the One M8, whereas on the Z2, it almost has this sort of ambery kind of pink hue to it, and you'll notice that throughout. If we keep scrolling down through all this white, you'll see that sort of color on the Z2 everywhere. But then when you get somewhere like here with this AT&T logo, the blue just sort of has that deeper blue, that sort of richer tone. So kind of some trade-offs there. You do have whiter whites on the LCD on the HTC One M8, but maybe deeper, richer colors on the Z2. So it's kind of a toss-up there. I don't know which one I prefer. Again, I think the One M8 kind of washes things out, whereas the Z2 doesn't. Let's talk other UI stuff though. So the home screen setup, we'll come back to that. But if you're in the app drawer, you've got the vertical scrolling drawer on the One M8, and you've got this horizontal on the Z2 with a slide out menu that has some extra features. Again, this isn't really a competition, but I prefer the horizontal way that we do it on the Z2. You can swipe up to Google Now on each. Z2 has an extra button for media consumption. I really wish you could turn that off because I just like swiping up, not over to the side. This is what their multitasking UIs look like. The Z2 is a little more traditional. HTC's not so much. In terms of home screen stuff, though, let me add a screen here on the Z2. So they're not terribly different. Obviously, you have blink feed on the HTC One M8, and you don't necessarily have a news reader on the Z2, but they're kind of very similar. So the UIs in terms of adding and removing widgets and changing wallpapers and home screens, they're somewhat similar. HTC still does a little wonky, I think, and the Sony device is pretty standard here. You can see with your shortcuts down here at the bottom for whatever you want, including themes. If we jump into quick settings, similar styles up here as well, and you can fully edit these and remove buttons and rearrange them and change them and sort of do all sorts of different stuff here. In the settings menus, same thing. They're actually pretty similar. They just are skinned slightly different, but not a lot of differences going on there. And I can show you they are actually both running Android 4.4.2, so both running the most recent version of Android at this time, which is kind of nice and something, we used to see phones come out all the time and they're always a build behind. Now we're starting to sort of reel that in a little bit. One other thing I did want to mention though is sort of battery life. The Z2 I've been using for, just over a weekend. And I will say that the battery life is phenomenal. So I had decent battery life results on my One M8, but the Z2 has just destroyed it. So you can see it gives you an estimated battery time that you have left. You can obviously go into your battery usage. Now, over the weekend, I think I charged it once, and it lasted like 30 hours or something crazy like that. And now the Z2 has stamina mode and low battery mode, and I haven't even used those. I've just been getting exceptional battery life. And the One M8 has a sort of ultra extreme power saving mode, not on the Verizon variant yet. And so it's got that as well. But the 3200 milliamp hour battery in the Z2 is just a monster. I can't kill this thing. I had to really watch some video and do some real damage to sort of kill the battery life on it. It's been pretty phenomenal. So yeah, if you're looking for making this a battle, the Z2 most definitely dominates in the battery department. If we look at camera real quick, and this is just kind of a UI tour, we're hoping to do a big camera battle sort of soon to show you guys actual photo results. But again, you have a 4 megapixel camera on the One M8 and a 20 megapixel camera on the Z2. In terms of UI though, the layouts are actually pretty similar. They actually have mode buttons, which you can jump into and switch between modes. The Z2 has a ton of different modes, and you can add more and things like that. HTC is really sort of limited theirs to just a few, even though you can add custom cameras. But you can see the layout's similar. You have your shutter button and your gallery button and your modes button kind of all in the same spots. Your menu buttons look identical or in sort of the same spot. You can customize all sorts of things. You can do manual settings, and they really are quite similar. Although I will say that, and I'm obviously not taking a picture of anything but a gray desk, but the shutter on the One M8 is still, no one can match it. So, I mean, you tap it and it takes a photo instantly. You can see it up there. It just takes them instantly. Whereas the Z2, there's definitely a little delay. I mean, it's got to focus and figure out what's going on, and then it takes photos. And it's taken some good photos, which again, we'll show you later. But so far, the shutter on the One M8 is just unmatched. You know, and that's sort of it in terms of a quick comparison here. Now, again, we've got a full review coming up of the Z2, but we just wanted to give you guys a little look at what it's like against one of the other flagships. And so, you know, just overall, the Z2, I've really liked my time with it. It's a little big, it's a little squared off, but the battery life's awesome. The display's great. The camera seems pretty good. It's obviously mostly waterproof. And so, you know, we'll give it some more run around and let you guys know what our final thoughts are. But, you know, so far everything is super good. So hopefully this device comes to the US soon, so you guys can all have a chance to give it some run. Anyways, we are Droid Life, and we're out. Peace.